Gbàgede Ìmọ̀ TV, Gbàgede Ìmọ̀ TV, níbi wọ́n ti ń dábìí ẹ̀dùn tí wọ́n ń rọ̀ bí òwú. Gbàgede Ìmọ̀ TV, láti ń gbóhùn sáfẹ́fẹ́, láti ń dábìí ẹ̀dùn tá ń rọ̀ bí òwú. Gbàgede Ìmọ̀ TV, Gbàgede Ìmọ̀ TV, ọgbọ́n ń bẹ, òye ń bẹ, ìdánilẹ́kọ̀ọ́ lóríṣiríṣi ní Gbàgede Ìmọ̀ TV. Ẹ máa wò ó, ẹ máa gbọ́.
Ní gbogbo ibi tí ẹ bá ti láǹfààní láti máa gbọ́ wa lórúkọ bàbá Gbàgede Ìmọ̀ ni mo kí gbogbo yín pé ẹ kú dédé àsìkò yìí lónìí lórí ọ̀rọ̀ tó ń lọ bó ṣe ń lọ là ń tẹ̀lé ohun tá a bá lè mójú kúrò níbẹ̀ níṣẹ́ là ń mójútó ni. Ìbéèrè mi rèé fún gbogbo ẹ̀yin tẹ́ ẹ̀ láǹfààní láti gbọ́ mi, ṣe ìdájọ́ òdodo ṣó ṣì wà lórílẹ̀‐èdè yìí bí? Ṣé ìdájọ́ òdodo ó ṣì ń lékè ní àwọn apá ibìkan lórílẹ̀‐èdè Nàìjíríà, bí ká sọ pé lórílẹ̀‐èdè Nàìjíríà ní gbogbo, níbi tó jẹ́ wípé nígbà tí àwọn èèyàn bá kú tán ní ọ̀pọ̀ àṣírí yóò bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí ní máa jẹyọ nípa ti àwọn nǹkan tó ṣekú pa wọ́n, tó jẹ́ wípé a lè láǹfààní láti gbé igi dínà yìí kí ikú náà tó dé bá wọn, ṣùgbọ́n a kò ṣe àwọn nǹkan wọ̀nyí. Ìgbà tí ẹlẹ́ran bá wá tu lórí ìsótán la ó máa jáde, la ó máa sọ wípé ìdájọ́ òdodo la fẹ́. Èmi ò sọ pé ìdájọ́ òdodo ṣe bẹ́ẹ̀ kò dá o láti máa pè fún, ṣùgbọ́n nígbà míì ó yẹ ká máa gbé àwọn ìgbésẹ̀ yẹn kó tó di wípé ọ̀pọ̀ kan bàjẹ́. Gbogbo ọ̀rọ̀ mi lénìí ó máa dá lórí àwọn nǹkan kan tí ń ṣẹlẹ̀ ní ilẹ̀ káàárọ̀ òjìrè. Bẹ́ẹ̀ náà ni màá fẹ́ jẹ́ ká rí gẹ́gẹ́ bí nǹkan tó lè ṣe ìrànlọ́wọ́ fún wa bí a ti ṣe rí ìrìn àjò yìí. A dúpẹ́ wípé lásìkò yìí àwọn àṣírí ńlá kankan ń ṣe bẹ́ẹ̀ ó ń tú jáde nípa ti àwọn èèyàn kan tí kò yẹ kí wọ́n kú ní àìpẹ́ ọjọ́, tó wá di wípé wọ́n padà jáde kúrò láyé. Ó wá di wípé àwa èèyàn wá ṣẹ̀ṣẹ̀ ń pariwo títọ́ àti lódò, á pariwo títí ńgbà náà, ṣùgbọ́n ọwọ́ agbára kò jẹ́ kí àwa èèyàn kan lè pariwo débì kan láti lè sọ wípé a pè fún ìdájọ́ òdodo. Lórúkọ bàbá Gbàgede Ìmọ̀, àfin tèmi ò nílò ìdánimọ̀ lọ́jà, tó bá dọ́jà báyìí wọ́n á mọ̀ kó dọ́jà ni. Èmi tìyẹn tòótọ́ Samuel Owóyẹmí, fẹ́lẹ́fẹ́lẹ́ láyé lórúkọ mi, fẹ́lẹ́ ni gbogbo èèyàn mọ̀ mí sí. Èmi náà kọ́, Ọlọ́run ọba òkè òun ló fún mi ṣe ní gbogbo ìgbà. Èmi náà ni mo sì jẹ́ atọ́kọ̀ ètò ọ̀rọ̀ tó ń lọ fún ti ọ̀sán òní, àbí ní gbogbo ibi tí ẹ bá ti láǹfààní láti máa gbọ́ mi. Ẹ jẹ́ kí n kọ́kọ́ bẹ̀rẹ̀ wípé ọ̀rọ̀ ò tí ì dá. Bí irọ́ bá lọ lógún ọdún, ọjọ́ kò òtítọ́ á dé bá gbogbo àwọn nǹkan yìí, torí pé ìyàn ogún ọdún á máa gbóná fẹ́lẹ́fẹ́lẹ́ ni, àti wípé kò sí àṣegbé kan, àṣepamọ́ ló wà. Ọ̀rọ̀ tí mo fẹ́ mẹ́nubà lónìí wọ́n ṣe bẹ́ẹ̀ wọ́n jọra wọn, torí pé nígbà tí àwọn méjèèjì jáde kúrò láyé tán ló di wípé àwọn èèyàn pariwo ìdájọ́ òdodo. Bó tilẹ̀ jẹ́ pé alákọ̀ọ́kọ́ wọ́n pariwo ìdájọ́ òdodo, ṣùgbọ́n látàrí ìṣèjọba tó wà lóde nígbà náà kò fún àwọn èèyàn wọ̀nyí láǹfààní láti lè pè fún ìdájọ́ òdodo náà délẹ̀ nígbà náà, torí ẹni bá pè fún wọn á fi kélé òfin gbé ni, wọn á ṣe bẹ́ẹ̀, wọn á sọ sí inú ọgbà ẹ̀wọ̀n, wọn á sì fìyà jẹ wọ́n, wọn á sì fi ẹ̀tọ́ wọn dùn wọ́n, wọn á tẹ̀ ẹ̀tọ́ wọn mọ́lẹ̀ látàrí pé wọ́n pè fún ìdájọ́ òdodo. Àwọn tó wá wà ní ipò náà nígbà náà, torí wọ́n wà ní ipò, wọn ò fẹ́ fi ipò náà sílẹ̀ láì mọ̀ wípé lọ́jọ́kanjọ́kan there's no forever champion ni ọ̀rọ̀ tó ń wà nílẹ̀ yìí. Wọn á ṣe bẹ́ẹ̀, wọn wá fi wọ́n sínú ìgbèkùn láti lè má rí ẹnu àti sọ àwọn nǹkan kan tó jẹ́ wípé wọ́n mọ̀ wípé àwọn ará ìlú wọn á gbọ́ ohun táwọn ará bí ń sọ. Ẹ jẹ́ n kọ́kọ́ mú ọ̀rọ̀ ẹni tí ń ṣe gbajúgbajà olórin tàkásùpé, ìlérí olúwa alọ́ba tí gbogbo ìlú mọ̀ sí Mohbad. ọ̀rọ̀ òun àti MKO Abiola ó fẹ́ fi ẹ̀gbẹ́ kan jọra wọn, bẹ́ẹ̀ náà ni ó fẹ́ lọ ní ìfẹ̀gbẹ́kẹ̀gbẹ́ lórí àwọn nǹkan tó ṣẹlẹ̀ nípa ti ikú àwọn méjèèjì. Nígbà tí MKO Abiola jáde láyé tán, bó tilẹ̀ jẹ́ wípé àwọn èèyàn rí wípé ògo rẹ̀ yóò tàn, ṣùgbọ́n kọ́lọ̀ ń gbà wá lọ́wọ́ ẹni tí ń fi ọwọ́ bò ògo ẹni ni, tí wọn ò fẹ́ jẹ́ kéèyàn débi tí ó jẹ́ ibi àṣeyọrí. MKO Abiola àwọn èèyàn rí gẹ́gẹ́ bí ẹni tí ó lè mú àwọn èèyàn kúrò nínú ìṣẹ́ àti òṣì, wọ́n rí gẹ́gẹ́ bí ọ̀nà àbáyọ fún àwọn èèyàn kan dẹ̀ rí MKO Abiola gẹ́gẹ́ bí ẹni tí ó lè gba ìjẹ lẹ́nu wọn, gẹ́gẹ́ bí ẹni tí ó lè kọ ìyà, gẹ́gẹ́ bí ẹni tí ó lè ṣe kíni, tí ó lè sọ wọ́n di ẹni ẹ̀yìn tó bá dé ipò aláṣẹ. Ọ̀pọ̀ ẹ̀kọ́ ló dìrò mọ́ ọ̀rọ̀ MKO Abiola nípa ti àwọn ọ̀rẹ́, àwọn tó dalẹ̀ rẹ̀, àwọn tí a ò lérò wípé wọ́n lè jáde fún nígbà náà wọ́n jáde fún. Máa débẹ̀ lénìí, ṣùgbọ́n jẹ́ kí n kọ́kọ́ mẹ́nu bà eléyìí náà torí ọ̀rọ̀ náà ń jọra wọn. Bí igi bá rélugi torí ẹ̀ ni a kọ́kọ́ gbé. Bí ẹ kò bá gbàgbé, lọ́jọ́ 12 oṣù kẹsàn-án ọdún 2023 ní ìṣẹ̀lẹ̀ ńlá kan ṣẹlẹ̀ lórílẹ̀‐èdè Nàìjíríà tó mì gbogbo àgbáláyé títì. Kódà àwọn èèyàn rò wípé ó máa débi tó dé nígbà tí ariwo náà ta. Ògo lágbo àwọn olórin tó jẹ́ wípé ó dàbí ìtọ̀nà ọlà fún àwọn mọ̀lẹ́bí rẹ̀ tó yan orin láàyò. Ó kọ̀ láti lọ ilé ẹ̀kọ́, bó tilẹ̀ jẹ́ kó lọ sí ilé ẹ̀kọ́ ṣùgbọ́n kò gbájúmọ́ ètò ẹ̀kọ́ rẹ̀ fúnra lára rẹ̀ náà ló ṣe sọ. Nígbà tí ó dé ilé ẹ̀kọ́ darapọ̀ mọ́ àwọn ẹgbẹ́ kan, ó di wípé orin rẹ̀ ó gbé jáde fi gbangba wálíà. Torí ẹ̀ ni mo ṣe máa ń sọ fún gbogbo àwọn ènìyàn wípé ẹ mọ ẹni tí ẹ̀ ń bá rìn. Àwọn èèyàn kan wà, wọn kò ṣe kí ni, wọn kò yẹ lẹ́ni tí ń bá rìn ìrìn àjò rẹ̀. Àwọn èèyàn kan dẹ̀ wà tó jẹ́ wípé wọ́n á bẹ̀rẹ̀ ìrìn àjò yìí, ìgbà díẹ̀ ni wọ́n máa bẹ̀rẹ̀ ìrìn àjò yẹn dà, ìwọ ò dẹ̀ fi wọ́n lẹ̀. Tí o bá ti rí àpẹẹrẹ pé ibi tó dé rèé o nígbà tí wọ́n ṣe lè bẹ̀rẹ̀ ìrìn àjò. Ìlérí Olúwa lọ́ba Mohbad ó ṣe bẹ́ẹ̀, ó bá àwọn èèyàn kan rìnrìn àjò nígbà ìrìn àjò orin rẹ̀ tó yàn láàyò. Ó wá mingu pẹ̀lú àwọn èèyàn lótìtọ́ àti lódodo, wọ́n gbé sí ìta gbangba, wọ́n ṣe ìrànlọ́wọ́ fún un. Ṣùgbọ́n kí ni àwọn ìpalára èyí tí ó dé bá ìgbésí ayé ẹ̀ nígbà tí ó wà pẹ̀lú àwọn aráabí yìí? Ẹ tọwọ́ bọ ìwé àdéhùn tán, ó wá di wípé ẹ fẹ́ lọ, ó wá di nǹkan tó jẹ́ pé ó lágbára púpọ̀. Gbogbo alámọ̀ ohun tó ṣẹlẹ̀ tó fi mọ́ DJ kan nígbà náà, òun náà ó jáde ní ti gbàgbé orúkọ DJ yẹn tó ní Naira Marley àti àwọn akẹgbẹ́ rẹ̀ ni wọ́n sọ ohun tó di bí òun ṣe dà lásìkò yìí. Ìyábọ̀ Òjó gbé, ẹ má gbàgbé ohun tí ó tún fa àwọn nǹkan wá fún Ìyábọ̀ Òjó, òun náà ní ọ̀rọ̀ Mohbad. Nígbà tí gbogbo ẹ̀ ń ṣe bẹ́ẹ̀ tó ń pariwo lọ́tún, tí gbogbo àwọn orílẹ̀-èdè Nàìjíríà ń pariwo fún ìdádò òdodo, wọ́n ó ṣaláìsí ní ọjọ́ 12 oṣù kẹsàn-án ọdún 23. Wọ́n gbé sin lọ́jọ́ kejì ní ọ̀nà tí ò yẹ. Kódà wọ́n yí orí ẹ̀ sínú pósí ní ẹni tó ṣe bẹ́ẹ̀ tó jẹ́ gbajúgbajà. Ṣùgbọ́n inú àwọn ọmọ orílẹ̀-èdè Nàìjíríà ò dùn, wọ́n pariwo pé irú eléyìí ò gbọdọ̀ wáyé. Ariwo ta, wọ́n lọ wó òkú Mohbad, wọ́n ẹ̀zúmù ẹ̀, wọ́n dẹ̀ ṣe kí ni, wọ́n gbé lọ síbi tó yẹ kí wọ́n gbé lọ, wọ́n wá bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí ní fà á lẹ́yọ kọ̀ọ̀kan. Naira Marley, Azeez Fashola tí gbogbo èèyàn mọ̀ sí Naira Marley, Samson Balógun Ẹlẹ́tù tí gbogbo èèyàn mọ̀ sí Sam Larry, àti àwọn èèyàn Prime Boy òun náà fi orí kọ́ lórí ọ̀rọ̀ yìí látàrí pé òun àti Mohbad ni wọ́n jọ lọ síbi ayẹyẹ ìkẹyìn níbi tí wọ́n ti sọ wípé wọ́n wọ̀ ìyá àjà. Oríṣiríṣi ọ̀rọ̀ la gbọ́. Ìjọ tí Mohbad dé lórí níbi ayẹyẹ náà ló kì í kó fi ọwọ́ ṣèṣe níbi tó ti ń gbìyànjú láti máa kó ẹ̀ṣẹ́ fún Prime Boy Ibrahim Owódùnní. Nígbà tó délé, oríṣiríṣi àwọn nǹkan kan ló ṣẹlẹ̀ ní ìgbà náà tó di wípé ẹni tí ń ṣe ọ̀rẹ́ Mohbad, ìyẹn Sodiq tí a mọ̀ sí Spendi, ó ránṣẹ́ pé nọ́ọ̀sì èyí tí kì í ṣe akọ́ṣẹ́mọṣẹ́ dójú àmì Fèyíṣayọ̀ Ògìdìngbé láti wá tọ́jú Mohbad ní ilé tó yẹ kí wọ́n gbé lọ síbi tó yẹ kó ti gba ìtọ́jú. injection abẹ́rẹ́ ohun tí wọ́n sọ fún yẹn lórí ẹ̀rọ ìbánisọ̀rọ̀ ló fi ń ṣe àwọn nǹkan lọ́kọ̀ òjọ̀kan ló fi kó wá sí ilé Mohbad ni wọ́n bá fún Mohbad lábẹ́rẹ́ o ló bá ṣe bẹ́ẹ̀ ló gbòdì lára Mohbad bí ó ṣe di wípé Mohbad di ẹni tí wọ́n ń gbé lọ sí ilé ìwòsàn níbi tí wọ́n ti fi ìdí rẹ̀ múlẹ̀ wípé brought in dead ó ti ṣe bẹ́ẹ̀ ó ti jáde kúrò láyé. Òótọ́ ni o irọ́ ni o wọ́n fi ìdí rẹ̀ múlẹ̀ nítòótọ́ wípé Mohbad ó ṣe bẹ́ẹ̀ ó jáde kúrò láyé. Eléyìí ló wá fà á tí iléeṣẹ́ ọlọ́pàá fi bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí ní gbé ìgbésẹ̀ wípé gbogbo àwọn tó lọ́wọ́ sí ikú Mohbad o wọn ò gbọ́dọ̀ lọ lásán. Àwọn ọmọ orílẹ̀-èdè Nàìjíríà wọ́n sọ Sam Larry wọ́n sọ Naira Marley àti Fashola àti gbogbo àwọn èèyàn tí wọ́n mọ̀ nípa Mohbad wọ́n sọ wọ́n di ọ̀tá torí wípé wọ́n gbà wípé wọ́n ṣe bẹ́ẹ̀ wọ́n finá mọ́ Mohbad ni wọ́n gbà wípé àwọn ará bí wọ́n ṣe okùnfà ikú Mohbad. Ẹ má gbàgbé o ìyàwó Mohbad ẹni tí ń ṣe Wùmí òun náà forí kó lórí ọ̀rọ̀ tó wà lẹ́yìn ó di wípé wọ́n gbé lọ sí ilé ẹjọ́ kòrónà ní ìlú Ìkòròdú àtìgbà náà ni wọ́n ti ń fà á wọ́n fà á títí wọ́n fà á débi tó dé wípé wọ́n wá tún sọ wípé DNA àtúgbọ́dọ̀ àjẹyọ lórí ọ̀rọ̀ yìí DNA jáde ọ̀rọ̀ DNA jáde ni òun náà tún fà lọ́tùn lẹ́yìn tí ọ̀rọ̀ ikú Mohbad tí ó fa ariwo làásìgbò nínú mọ̀lẹ́bí Mohbad tó wá di wípé àwọn apá ibì kan wọ́n ń jà fún bàbá Mohbad àwọn apá ibì kan wọ́n ń jà fún ìyá àti Wùmí. Ọ̀rọ̀ yìí gbogbo ẹ̀yin tẹ́ bá wà lórílẹ̀‐èdè Nàìjíríà káàkiri àgbáláyé ọ̀rọ̀ Mohbad kì í ṣe tuntun sí yín mọ́ ẹ ti gbọ́ kódà wá gan apáwọn débẹ̀ ní ìlú Ìkòròdú apáwọn ṣe é gẹ́gẹ́ bó ṣe yẹ ká ṣe amójútó ẹ̀yin náà dẹ̀ rí i pé ọ̀rọ̀ náà lọ. DNA ni wọ́n pariwo títí tí wọ́n fi gbé òkú Mohbad sí ibi tí wọ́n gbé sí tí wọ́n sì ń ṣe àyẹ̀wò lọ́tùn lósì oríṣiríṣi èsì àyẹ̀wò autopsy òun ló jáde. Ẹ jẹ́ kí n má fọ̀rọ̀ gùn ó wá padà ṣẹlẹ̀ ní àná òde yìí níbi tí ilé ẹjọ́ májísírèètì tí ó fìdí kalẹ̀ sí Ìyábá tí wọ́n ti wá ṣe àgbékalẹ̀ ọ̀rọ̀ kan wípé ǹjẹ́ ẹ jẹ́ mọ̀ wípé Abdulazeez Fashola tí gbogbo èèyàn mọ̀ sí Naira Marley àti Samson Balógun Ẹlẹ́tù tí gbogbo èèyàn mọ̀ sí Sam Larry wọn kò mọ̀ nǹkan kan nípa ikú Mohbad. Ẹ má gbàgbé pé ìyàwó Mohbad ó sọ níbi ètò ìfọ̀rọ̀wérọ̀ kan wípé ọkọ òun gbogbo àwọn èèyàn tí wọ́n búlì ọkọ òun tí wọ́n ṣe bẹ́ẹ̀ ìdájọ́ òdodo làwọn fẹ́ kí ọ̀rọ̀ DNA tó yọjú. Ẹ má gbàgbé wọ́n fi ọwọ́ gbé Sam Larry prime boy tí wọ́n sọ wípé òun náà lọ́wọ́ sí ikú Mohbad wọ́n wá ní kí wọ́n máa jẹ́jọ́ lọ́kọ̀ òjọ̀kan ẹjọ́ náà ni wọ́n wá jẹ́ débi tí ó dé lánàá yìí tí wọ́n fi bára wọn ní ilé ẹjọ́ tí wọ́n fi wá sọ di mímọ̀ pé adájọ́ tó jókòó ti ẹjọ́ náà magistrate Ejiro Kubenje ló wá sọ di mímọ̀ pé Naira Marley Sam Larry àti prime boy Ibrahim Owódùn ní ọ̀rẹ́ tímọ́tímọ́ ìgbà ìwé Mohbad wọn kò lẹ́sùn kan láti jẹ́ lórí ikú Mohbad. Èmi ń wò lápá kan wípé ṣé ìdájọ́ òdodo ṣébi tó fẹ́ gbà wáyé nìyẹn. Lótìtọ́ wọn ò ká wípé wọ́n fún Mohbad lọ́rùn ṣùgbọ́n lọ́nà kan àbí lọ́nà kejì ẹ má jẹ́ ká tanra wa ipa táwọn ará bí yìí kó nínú ọ̀rọ̀ ikú Mohbad kì í ṣe kéré ní. Gbogbo àwọn kan wọ̀nyí ní àwọn ọmọ orílẹ̀-èdè Nàìjíríà wá fi ọwọ́ lẹ́rán ní àná nígbà tí wọ́n ń gbọ́ wípé kí ló dé lẹ fi wá dá àwọn ará bí ẹ̀dẹ̀ dá wọn sílẹ̀ láyọ̀ àti àlàáfíà wípé kí wọ́n máa lọ pé wọ́n lẹ́jẹ̀ kankan láti jẹ. Ìdájọ́ yìí kò dùn mọ́ àwọn ọmọ orílẹ̀-èdè Nàìjíríà kò dùn mọ́ wọn nínú lápá kan torí wọ́n gbàgbọ́ wípé lọ́nà kan tàbí lọ́nà kejì ó yẹ kí àwọn ará bí kí wọ́n fi ojú winá òfin ni torí pé àwọn náà wọ́n kópa bí ikú Mohbad ṣe dé. Nílé ẹjọ́ lánàá ni wọ́n fi wá sọ di mímọ̀ wípé ẹni tí ń ṣe Sodiq ìyẹn spending tí ó pe Fèyíṣayọ̀ Ògèdèǹgbé tó jẹ́ òṣìṣẹ́ nọ́ọ̀sì wá òun àti Fèyíṣayọ̀ ni wọ́n wá lẹ́jọ́ láti jẹ́ báyìí látàrí ìwà ìbìkítà ignorance àti negligence èyí tí wọ́n wò láti tọ́jú Mohbad lọ́jọ́ tí à ń wí yìí. Ọ̀rọ̀ Fèyíṣayọ̀ Ògèdèǹgbé ó dúró lápá kan wípé Ọlọ́run ní jẹ́ ká ṣiṣẹ́ ṣe láṣẹ ọba mi aláwùrárí. Ẹ gbọ́ bí ìyá Fèyíṣayọ̀ Ògèdèǹgbé nígbà tí ẹjọ́ náà wá nígbà náà ẹ gbọ́ bí ìyá náà ṣe ṣe àlàyé lẹ́kùnrẹ́ tó ń bẹ̀ wípé ọmọ òun ò mọ̀ pé bó ṣe máa rí rèé o, kí gbogbo abiyamọ ayé kí wọ́n ṣàánú òun. Ẹ wá wo ibi tọ́rọ̀ náà wá já sí lónìí. Wọ́n sún ẹjọ́ náà sí ọjọ́ 28 nínú oṣù kẹta oṣù tá a fẹ́ mú yìí láti mọ ibi tí ọ̀rọ̀ náà lọ lórí ọ̀rọ̀ àwọn méjèèjì. Ìbéèrè táwọn ọmọ orílẹ̀-èdè Nàìjíríà wá ń béèrè lásìkò yìí òun ni wípé ṣé torí àwọn Sam Larry, Naira Marley ṣé torí wọ́n lówó láti fi gbèjà ara wọn. Lótìtọ́ àti lódodo a mọ̀ pé Fèyíṣayọ̀ ó jẹ̀bi ní àwọn apá àbìkan látàrí bó ṣe tọ́jú Mohbad tó jẹ́ pé ó gbòdì lára Mohbad. Ṣé tóun náà bá lówó ṣé kò ní mo jẹ ni? Ẹ jẹ́ ká wo nǹkan tó ṣẹlẹ̀ ní ilé ẹjọ́ lánàá bọ́rọ̀ ṣe lọ ní ilé ẹjọ́ àti ohun tí wọ́n bá bọ̀ bí wọ́n ṣe yọ̀ǹda àwọn arábí.
The late Nigerian singer Mohbad died in controversial circumstances on September 12, 2023 at the age of 27. He was swiftly buried the next day in what many considered to be a hasty move. Videos soon surfaced online of assaults and harassment he suffered at the hands of his record label, Malian Records, owned by Naira Marley, and Mohbad's fans soon began a social media campaign for an autopsy to determine the cause of death. On September 2022, Mohbad's body was exhumed, and a week later, on September 29, a coroner's inquest began sitting also to unravel the cause of death. In October of the same year, music artist Naira Marley, promoter Sam Larry, and Prime Boy were invited by the coroner to say what they knew about the death of the then 27-year-old artist. In May 2024, a forensic pathologist from the Lagos State University Teaching Hospital, LASUT, Professor Sunday Shoyemi, told the coroner that the result of an autopsy conducted on the deceased failed to ascertain the cause of death. Following the inconclusiveness of the government's autopsy, Mohbad's family rejected the results and pushed for an independent autopsy. The coroner granted their request, and the result of that autopsy is still being awaited. At the magistrate court sitting in Sabo Yaba Tuesday morning, those fingered in the death of Mohbad joined a few family members, fans, and lawyers involved in the case to listen to the conclusion of the Lagos State government's forensic investigation into the case. In the 6-page legal advice put together by the Director of Public Prosecution, Dr. Jide Martins, on behalf of the Attorney General of Lagos, the DPP noted that his office can no longer wait indefinitely for the coroner's report, and that Mohbad's family was also at liberty to present its own forensic report during the trial of those indicted by the DPP. Magistrate Ejiro Kubenje, who read and implemented the legal advice, freed Naira Marley, Sam Larry, Prime Boy, and Mohbad's former manager, Babatunde Opere. The court held that according to the legal advice, they had no case to answer with regards to the death of Mohbad. The DPP's advice also noted that though documented accounts of unlawful assault on Mohbad were actually carried out by Naira Marley and Sam Larry, sometimes acting on the instigation of Opere, these accusations do not make them criminally responsible for the death of Mohbad. Investigations showed that it was in the process of punching Prime Boy that Mohbad hit the glass of a vehicle, cut himself, and sustained an injury in the right arm which bled, became swollen, and was eventually improperly treated by an auxiliary nurse who lacked medical training, and which eventually resulted in Mohbad's death. The DPP says for this reason, it shall be prosecuting the auxiliary nurse Fèyíṣayọ̀ Ògèdèngbé and one of Mohbad's friends, Ayobami Sadiq, also known as Spending, who procured the nurse, knowing full well that she was not a trained medical practitioner. They will both face charges of reckless and negligent acts, contrary to the criminal laws of Lagos State. The duo will be prosecuted at the magistrate courts, and the case has been adjourned to March 24th for mention. Shola Shoyele, Channels Television News.
Ṣé ti rí bí ọ̀rọ̀ ṣe lọ lórí ọ̀rọ̀ ikú Mohbad tí ó ṣẹ̀tún jẹyọ lásìkò yìí ní ilé ẹjọ́? Bó ṣe lọ ni àwọn oníròyìn gbé jáde tí mo sì láǹfààní láti fi hàn yín yìí. níbi tí wọ́n ti sọ di mímọ̀ wípé prime boy Ibrahim Owódùnní kò lẹ́jọ́ jẹ́ lórí ẹjọ́ yìí. Azeez Fáṣọlá Naira Marley kò lẹ́jọ́ jẹ́. Samson Balógun Ẹlẹ́tù tí gbogbo èèyàn mọ̀ sí Sam Larry kò lẹ́jọ́ jẹ́. Ọ̀pọ̀ àwọn ẹ̀rí lóríṣiríṣi ni wọ́n jẹyọ nígbà tí ikú Mohbad wáyé. Ibi tá a ti rí Sam Larry tó ti lọ ká Mohbad mọ́ níbi tó ti ń ṣúùtì musical video rẹ̀ tí ó fi pariwo lé ohun tó fi tì lórí. Oríṣiríṣi àwọn nǹkan nígbà tí Mohbad jáde, a rí àwọn traces kan tó fi hàn dájúdájú wípé àwọn ará bíi lótìtọ́ àti lódodo wọn kó ipa kan látàrí ohun tó ṣekú pa Mohbad. Ṣé ká wá sọ wípé àwọn ohun tí wọ́n ṣe yìí kò ní nǹkan kan ṣe pẹ̀lú ọ̀rọ̀ ikú rẹ̀? A kì í rìn kórí mámì o. A lè sọ wípé wọn ò mọ ẹjọ́ dá lórílẹ̀‐èdè Nàìjíríà, ṣùgbọ́n ìgbésẹ̀ yìí kò dùn mọ́ àwọn ọmọdé Nàìjíríà nínú láàtọ̀. Mi ò bá fi àwọn kọ́mẹ̀ntì kan ránṣẹ́ sí kí n fi hàn yín, ṣùgbọ́n àwọn kọ́mẹ̀ntì yẹn wọ́n lá ọ̀rọ̀ púpọ̀ tí a lè máa fi hàn òun ló wà nínú ẹ̀, torí mú bí àwọn ọmọ orílẹ̀-èdè Nàìjíríà púpọ̀ wọ́n rí wípé kò sí ìdájọ́ òdodo kan lórí ọ̀rọ̀ ikú Mohbad, wípé kí wọ́n lọ gbé ọmọ náà níbi tí wọ́n gbé jù sí, kí wọ́n dẹ̀ lọ sin, kí a mọ̀ wípé ọ̀rọ̀ Mohbad kò ti tán nílẹ̀. Torí ó ti ń lọ bí oṣù kejìdínlógún báyìí tí wọ́n ti gbé ọmọ náà sí ilé ìgbókùsí. Ṣùgbọ́n kí n tó kúrò lórí ọ̀rọ̀ Mohbad, àwọn mọ̀lẹ́bí rẹ̀ tí wọ́n wá di wípé wọ́n fa ìjà lórí ara wọn kọ́. Ọ̀rọ̀ Mohbad, ìròyìn kan tẹ̀mí lọ́wọ́ láìpẹ́ yìí tí mo gbọ́ wípé wọ́n ní bàbá Mohbad ó ń bílèmù ọmọ rẹ̀ wípé ó ṣe lọ ra ilẹ̀ lórúkọ ìyá àwọn ọmọ tó fi sílẹ̀ sáyé lọ. Eléyìí tún gbaná lọ́dọ̀ àwọn ọmọ orílẹ̀-èdè Nàìjíríà, nítorí bàbá náà sọ wípé ìyẹn Joseph Alọ́ba tí ń ṣe bàbá Mohbad pé òun ò fi ìgbà kankan rí fi orúkọ Mohbad sínú àwọn ìwé dúkìá òun. Kí ló dé tí Mohbad ṣe bẹ́ẹ̀? Ẹ má gbàgbé pé bàbá Mohbad yìí láti ìgbà tọ́mọ rẹ̀ ti jáde kúrò láyé lóríṣiríṣi ìwà tó ti ń gbé yọ. Ọkùnrin ni ó kọ àwọn oríṣiríṣi orin, ó lọ sí àwọn ibì kan Bẹ̀rẹ̀kẹ̀tẹ̀ TV láti lọ sọ àwọn nǹkan lóríṣiríṣi. Kò pẹ́ kò jìnnà ní Wùmí náà jáde wípé ohun tí bàbá yìí ṣe ó yẹ òun lẹ́nu, ó tún threaten òun. Àwọn ọ̀rọ̀ yìí jáde púpọ̀ láìpẹ́ yìí. Mi ò kàn fẹ́ dá wa lágbára ọ̀rọ̀ ni àwọn ìwà kan tí bàbá Mohbad ń wù. Ẹ̀yin tẹ́ bá mọ̀, ẹ̀yin tẹ́ bá mi rí bàbá, ẹ sọ fún wọn wípé ó tó gẹ́ ọmọdé fíìmù kọ́ ti àwọn ìwà kan bọ́lẹ̀. Wùmí tí gbogbo èèyàn pariwo lé lórí látijọ́ yìí, òun náà jáde tiẹ̀ ó sọ ọ́, ṣùgbọ́n òun náà ní ipa tiẹ̀ tó kó lórí ọ̀rọ̀ ikú Mohbad gẹ́gẹ́ bí àwọn èèyàn ṣe rò nígbà náà. Ó dẹ̀ ti wá jáde sí gbangba wálé àpòhùn sọ tirẹ̀. Bàbá Mohbad, ẹ̀yin náà gbà kan lẹ̀ ń rìn lórí ọ̀rọ̀ Mohbad, ṣùgbọ́n ọ̀rọ̀ tí wá débi tó lápẹ̀rẹ̀ báyìí. Ẹ jẹ́ ká ṣe kíni, ẹ jẹ́ ká fi ẹ̀dọ̀ lórí òróǹro, ẹ jẹ́ ká dákẹ́ báyìí. Ẹ jẹ́ ká jogún míì, ẹ lọ gbé ọmọ yìí kúrò níbi tó wà, ẹ jẹ́ kí wọ́n sin. Torí nǹkan tó ń pè ní autopsy, wọ́n ti dissect ọmọ yìí ní oríṣiríṣi ọ̀nà tí ò dẹ̀ yẹ kó rí bẹ́ẹ̀. Ẹ jẹ́ kí ọmọ yìí, a gbọ́ wípé ìgbà tí àwọn Ìyábọ̀ Òjó àti àwọn èèyàn tí ń tó díke tí wọ́n ń jà fún Mohbad, ibẹ̀ láti rí pé wọ́n gbé pósí ọ̀fẹ́, wọ́n gbélẹ̀ fún Mohbad. Oríṣiríṣi nǹkan tí wọ́n máa fi sin Mohbad ni wọ́n gbélẹ̀ láti ìgbà náà. Ṣùgbọ́n ṣé wọ́n sin Mohbad ṣá? Ọ̀rọ̀ yìí yóò dàbí pẹ̀tẹ̀pẹ̀tẹ̀ ìtanà lọ́pàá ni. Ẹni bá tábà kó ṣe bẹ́ẹ̀ kó tún bẹ̀ ṣe ni. Ọ̀rọ̀ Mohbad kì í ṣe ọ̀rọ̀ kan tá a kò lè mójú kúrò níbẹ̀, torí ẹ̀kọ́ ó pọ̀ tó dìrọ̀ mọ́ ẹ̀. Mọ̀lẹ́bí fèlì ẹ̀, gọ́ọ̀mẹ̀ntì fèlì ẹ̀ nígbà kan ló kọ lẹ́tà sí iléeṣẹ́ ọlọ́pàá báwọn aráàlú yìí ń dúnkokò mọ́ òun. Ìgbésẹ̀ wo la gbé nígbà náà? Mọ̀lẹ́bí náà fèlì ẹ̀. Ìgbà tó wá dé àwọn ọ̀rẹ́ tó rò wípé wọ́n jẹ́ tiẹ̀, àwọn náà fèlì ẹ̀. Ẹ jẹ́ ká kẹ́kọ̀ọ́ tó dìrọ̀ mọ́ nǹkan wọ̀nyí dáadáa. Ọ̀rọ̀ yẹn náà ló wá dàbí ti ọ̀rọ̀ MKO Abiola. Ẹ̀ ń bi mí léèrè pé báwo ló ṣe jọra wọn. Ẹ má gbàgbé wípé Ibrahim Babangida yìí ó jẹ́ ọ̀rẹ́ tímọ́tímọ́ MKO Abiola ní ìgbà náà, tó jẹ́ pé àwọn èèyàn rí wọn wípé wọ́n ṣe bẹ́ẹ̀, wọ́n mọ́ra wọn dáadáa. ṣùgbọ́n ipa tí ó kó nígbà tí ó rí kó jáwé olúborí nígbà náà ló fi di wípé àwọn èèyàn ń wò wípé ǹjẹ́ ẹni tó súnmọ́ ní tí ó ń ṣe bẹ́ẹ̀ ó tún lè máa ṣe ẹni. Nígbà náà mi ò lè gbàgbé gbogbo inú àwọn èèyàn ń dùn ní MKO Abiola lọ́tún MKO Abiola lósì. Àwọn jíngù lóríṣiríṣi inú àwọn ọmọ orílẹ̀-èdè Nàìjíríà nínú wọn ń dùn wípé ẹni tí a fẹ́ dìbò yàn yìí ìtura ńlá ní Hope 93. Mi ò lè gbàgbé nígbà náà. Ó sọ àwọn ọmọ orílẹ̀-èdè Nàìjíríà lọ́pọ̀, ó sọ wọ́n di ẹni tí ń fi ẹsẹ̀ rìn, ó sọ wọ́n di ẹni tí wípé wọ́n rí òtítọ́ wọn ọ̀dẹ̀ lè sọ kankan. Ọ̀pọ̀ àwọn oníròyìn, ọ̀pọ̀ àwọn ajìjàgbara ni wọ́n fi sínú ìgbèkùn sínú àtìmọ́lé lọ́jọ́ tá à ń wí. Ẹ ó láǹfààní láti gbọ́ ọ̀rọ̀ lẹ́nu ọ̀kan lára àwọn gbajúgbajà agbẹjọ́rò tí ń jà fún ẹ̀tọ́ ọmọ ènìyàn tí wọ́n ṣe bẹ́ẹ̀ tí wọ́n tì mọ́lé nígbà náà nígbà tí ọ̀rọ̀ MKO Abiola ṣẹlẹ̀. Tọmọdé ò bá bàtàn á bà rọ́bà. Ẹ wá wò ó, ẹ̀rí ọkàn tí ò jẹ́ kí IPB gbádùn láti ìgbà náà tó mọ̀ wípé ipò tí òun náà wà ipò yóò tẹ́ òun lọ́rùn, bóyá ìdáríjì àwọn orílẹ̀-èdè Nàìjíríà tí òun ò tí ì pè fún láti jọ́ yìí, bó tilẹ̀ jẹ́ pé òun ń pè fún, ṣùgbọ́n ọ̀nà tí òun fi ń pè fún wọn kò tẹ́ wọn lọ́rùn. Wọ́n mọ̀ wípé ọ̀rọ̀ MKO Abiola ó ti ṣe kí ni, ó ti hàn gbangba sí àwọn ọmọ orílẹ̀-èdè Nàìjíríà kóun ló jáwé olúborí. Wọ́n kàn lọ́wọ́ agbára nígbà náà ni. Ìwé náà tó jáde, oríṣiríṣi àṣírí ló tú nínú ìwé yìí. Di bí mo ṣe ń bá yín sọ̀rọ̀ yìí, wọ́n sì ń fa àwọn nǹkan kan bí àṣírí ńláńlá, wọ́n sì ń fà á jáde nínú ọ̀rọ̀ ìwé yìí. Mọ̀lẹ́bí Abiola náà jáde, wọ́n ní ẹ wò ohun tó ṣẹlẹ̀ nígbà náà, ó lágbára púpọ̀, kò lè dá ìkólọ wa padà mọ́ nínú ẹbí mọ̀lẹ́bí Abiola. Lénìí ni ọ̀kan lára àwọn èèyàn kan tó jẹ́ gbòógì lára àwọn aṣòfin ó ń pè fún wípé ẹ ṣe ayẹyẹ ìbúra wọlé fún MKO Abiola káwa náà lè máa rí àwòrán rẹ̀ lára àwọn ààrẹ tí wọ́n ti jẹ lórílẹ̀-èdè Nàìjíríà, ká lè máa rí pé lótìtọ́ òun náà jẹ ààrẹ. Torí ọ̀pọ̀ nǹkan lẹ fi dùn ún. Òun àti ìyàwó rẹ̀ wọ́n dẹ̀ jà fún ìṣèjọba àwarawa lórí ọ̀rọ̀ òṣèlú yìí, wọ́n dẹ̀ dẹ́mi wọn légbodò. Ta ló wá recognize ìgbìyànjú rẹ̀? Wọ́n fi orúkọ rẹ̀ sọ pápá ìṣeré MKO ní ìlú Àbújá. Wọ́n fi àmì ẹ̀yẹ tó ga jù GCFR wọ́n fi dá lọ́lá nígbà tí ò sí mọ́ ìdájọ́ òdodo. Kí ló dé tí ò ṣe jẹyọ nígbà náà? Ó jẹyọ, ṣùgbọ́n wọ́n lu agbára láyé ìjọba ológun, wọ́n fi ṣe kí ni, wọ́n fi pa ọ̀pọ̀ ènìyàn lẹ́nu mọ́. Fẹ́mi Fálànà òun náà gbà lára àwọn ènìyàn tí wọ́n ṣe bẹ́ẹ̀ tí wọ́n kó nígbà náà. Tí òun náà wá jáde lénìí, ẹ láǹfààní láti gbọ́ òun Fẹ́mi Fálànà bóun náà ṣe sọ ọ́ di mímọ̀ bí àwọn nǹkan kan ṣe ṣẹlẹ̀ nígbà náà. Kódà òun náà wá sọ di mímọ̀ pé ẹ wò ó, mo ti ń kó àwọn agbẹjọ́rò, mo ti ń kó wọn jọ láti ṣe kíni, láti gbógun ti IPB lórí àwọn nǹkan tó dàbí títẹ̀ tọ́ ènìyàn mọ́lẹ̀ tó ṣe sí òun nígbà náà, nígbà tí wọ́n sọ sínú Kuje prison. Fẹ́mi Fálànà ṣe àwọn àlàyé kan tó jẹ́ wípé àwọn ọmọ orílẹ̀-èdè Nàìjíríà, ẹ jẹ́ ká rí àṣírí tí IPB tú yìí, ẹ jẹ́ ká rí beyond that, ẹ jẹ́ ká rí jù bẹ́ẹ̀ lọ. Tẹni tó kú ló gbé. Abiola ti lọ, ìyàwó rẹ̀ Kudirat Abiola ti lọ, ṣùgbọ́n kí làwọn nǹkan tí wọ́n ṣe lẹ́yìn náà? Àwa ṣẹ̀ṣẹ̀ ń pariwo lásìkò yìí. Mo kí gbogbo èèyàn orílẹ̀-èdè Nàìjíríà o, pé wọ́n gbìyànjú ní ọjọ́ táwọn yìí, ṣùgbọ́n wípò tó kàn lọ ni àwọn alágbára yé rọra máa wo tọjọ́ iwájú àti ìran rẹ, torí wípé ìyẹn ogún ọdún a máa gbóná àti wípé àṣegbé kan ò sí. Ẹ wò ó, ẹni tí ń ṣe Fálànà gbajúgbajà agbẹjọ́rò yìí ó sọ̀rọ̀ lórí ètò yẹn, ohun tó ṣẹlẹ̀ bójú ẹ̀ ṣe rí màpó ní ọjọ́ tí à ń wí yìí lórí ọ̀rọ̀ MKO Abiola. Ẹ̀yin ọmọ orílẹ̀-èdè Nàìjíríà, ẹ̀kọ́ tó dì mọ́ ikú Abiola láti ìgbà náà di àkókò yìí kì í ṣe kékeré o. ọ̀rọ̀ ẹ̀kọ́ tó dìrọ̀ mọ́ ikú Mohbad láti ìgbà náà títí di àkókò yìí kì í ṣe ọ̀rọ̀ kékeré rárá. Ẹ jẹ́ ká lọ gbóhùn tí agbẹjọ́rò gbajúgbajà tí ń jà fún ìtọ́ ọmọnìyàn Fẹ́mi Fálànà ohun tó sọ àti bó ṣe rí lójúwòye rẹ̀ nípa ti ohun tí wọ́n fi ojú Abiola rí nígbà ayé rẹ̀ àti lẹ́yìn ikú rẹ̀. Ẹ jẹ́ ká débẹ̀.
Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Femi Falana.
Thank you very much.
At some point, I had a conversation with, let us say, Mike Falana, of how your days in prison during the military days and how he had to independently take care of the children and in your absence were spending times in jail. But I'm imagining what kind of reflections IBB's book would have brought to your mind. In summary, how do you describe the record and the record and the account of former head of state Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida?
Well, I've taken time. I persuaded myself to read the book, and the impression I gathered at the end of the day was that an attempt was made by the retired general to recall events, but perhaps in an attempt to tell a story, he engaged in what I would call a careless distortion of history, because there are gaps that he was unable to fill at the end of the day. And I think he also might have forgotten that not all the dramatists personnae have passed away. So history has already taken care of the Babangida tenure. Any attempt by him now to rewrite history failed woefully in the book.
So from your own point of view, you don't quite agree with some of the accounts, especially in some of the dated events and some of the events which you personally are involved. And perhaps let's take it one after the other, because if we both are involved in an event, our accounts may be different depending on where the koboko hits, because the military used koboko a lot on the civilians at the time. But where the koboko hits more on you and where it hurts, where in the book did you feel that the account of IBB was distorted?
Many areas of the book. I mean, talking about the annulment of the election, General Babangida claimed that he traveled to Katsina on the 23rd of June 1993, and he was flabbergasted to learn about the annulment. I beg your pardon. All programs in the second quarter of the schedule, political transition program schedule, including June 12 election. He also banned the courts, particularly the Court of Appeal, that were then entertaining the case. And the Court of Appeal was going to decide the validity of the ex parte order of Justice Ikpeme and the ex parte order of Justice Saleh in the face of Section 19 of Decree 25 of 1987, that no court shall inquire into or make any order to stop elections. No interim order, no interlocutory order or final order will be made by any court to stop the conduct of election. So when they discover, when the junta discovered that the Court of Appeal was going to set aside those orders, a decree was enacted by General Babangida on the 22nd of June. So altogether, 5 decrees, which justify the annulment. So the announcement of 23rd by Unduka Irabo was anchored on the decrees enacted by him the previous day, justifying the annulment of election. That's number one. Number two, between 23rd of August and 26th, General Babangida promulgated 7 decrees, again to confirm the annulment, to legalize the interim national government, and for the country to move on. He claimed that he was not aware. He was taken aback on the 23rd of June. But on the 26th of June, he made a broadcast, a nationwide broadcast, justifying the annulment and alleging that the election was riddled with corruption, corrupt practices. Even though it appeared to have been fair and free, but the election could not be relied upon. Also on the 22nd of June, he annulled, or rather set aside, the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal, headed by the late Justice Bola Babalaki, set up by the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Chief Justice Mohammed Bello. So how he can turn around to give the impression that some forces, without his knowledge, annul the election. It's not.
Could it be
fair to
Could it be, Mr. Falana, that maybe the man at the very top is not really aware of the machinations of all of the scheming, and a lot of things happened.
The man at the top signed the decree to annul the election. Signed the decree.
Maybe he doesn't know the details of the.
No, to stop Babangida, he was sufficiently intelligent, and he once said, in the face of the crisis, I'm not only in office, I am in power. And he exercised the power against the interests of Nigeria. He also said at that time that they are not the election in the national interest. He never mentioned Abacha. No. And in any case, the annulment you are talking about was perhaps the last stage of the manipulation. Following the criminal annulment of the election, the campaign for democracy organized peaceful protests in many parts of the country. General Babangida ordered that the late Chief Gani Fawehinmi, the late Dr. Bekoran Somkuchi, and myself be arrested and brought to Abuja here, where we were charged before a chief magistrate in Wuse here for the allegations were unlawful assembly, conspiracy, unlawful assembly, and sedition. What was the sedition about? That we had published the results of the election, which he has not published in his book. But at that time, it was a criminal. He made it a criminal offense. Our bail was refused at the instance of the government. Again, the junta thought foolishly that once we were put away, there would be no protest in the country any longer. So we were sent to Kuje prison here. Again, sensing that we might get bail in the High Court, General Babangida ordered that we be detained in addition to the court remand under the State Security Detention Persons Decree number 2 of 1984. And so we were detained. Now, Now, you said we committed an offense by challenging the annulment of election. 32 years later, you are now saying, oh, I regret that we are not the election. So that means you knew. You deliberately arrested me, detained me, charged me, and paraded me as a criminal. Only for you to say now, sorry. No, you didn't say sorry. We regret what we did. No apologies. For me, we are taking it beyond the book. A year earlier, because Nigerians must not forget the fact that when General Babangida staged a palace coup on August 27, 1985, I'm talking of when he removed, and his colleague plotted the removal of another military head of state, General Muhammadu Buhari. He said, he criticized the Buhari Idi Agbon Tanzani's junta for not fixing a terminal date. So he said, we are going to leave office in 1990. In October 1990. 1990 came. He postponed the terminal date to 1992. 1992 came. He changed it to January 1993. January 1993 came. He changed it to August 1993. But what we did in 1992 was to say this postponement had to stop. So we organized protests and published posters. Babangida must go.
IBB must go was very popular.
Oh, yes.
Pages of
Yes.
Was major headlines on on major newspapers.
Of course, we were arrested in Lagos, brought to Abuja, FCT, and detained in Kuje prison under decree number 2. When the late Chief Ganifan went to court, Dr. Bekor Samkuchi, Baba Omojola, an economist, and myself were brought to Kuje prison in 1992. Chief Arami went to court on our behalf. For going to court on our behalf, he too was arrested and made to join us in prison. So I think on the 19th of May, they deceived us in prison that we're going home. So we pack our things. The vehicle that was taking us to the airport purportedly made some maneuver, and we found ourselves at the Gwagwalada Chief Magistrate Court, where we were charged with treasonable felony. Of course, they brought the then announced president to join us, Olusegun Mayegun. So 5 of us were charged with treasonable felony. Since we had no access to our lawyers, so the late Chief Ganifan and I decided to defend ourselves and our colleagues. So, even though we're asking for bail, we turn our arraignment to the trial of the junta. And I recall on that occasion, she found told the judge, my chief magistrate, Malam Bulama, that those who should be standing trial for treason, those who should be in this dock, are in the villa, led by General Babangida, because they had sacked, they had overthrown a democratically elected government on December 31st, 1983. So, those are the people that should be standing trial. Mr. And of course, no, just a point. When it came to my turn, I made it clear to the judge. This section of the law, Section 41 of the Criminal Code Act, which provides anybody who forms an intention to remove the president of his country during his term of office, otherwise than by constitutional means. I said, my lord, the man calling himself my president has no fixed term of office. So I couldn't have been brought here. Of course, the judge adjourned. 2 weeks later, he granted us bail, very liberal term, 20,000 around one shot in like son. The regime could not stand another proceeding. They couldn't go back to court. So that we don't turn the thing into a full trial of General Babangida and others. So they simply ran away. And the case was struck out. So I'm going to challenge the malicious prosecution. My malicious prosecution and that of my colleagues.
Is it not time bound? Because, no. I mean, so you want to prosecute General Babangida for whatever happened in his time as a military head?
Now, I've assembled a team of lawyers. They are looking into it because he has now brought it to life.
What exactly are you bringing?
He has brought it back to life by now admitting that there was no basis for my prosecution because he now says Abiola won the election, which was the basis of our protest. He's also saying, he shouldn't have, postpone the terminal date of his transition program, which again we're fighting. So which means there was no basis for our prosecution. It's malicious. Again, massive infringements of our rights, human rights. Because when you keep me in Kuje prison, you deny me my right to liberty, my freedom of movement. You also violate my right to choose the government of my country, pursuant to Article 13 of the African Charter.
Is the matter not started bad?
No, it's not started bad. Because the man who did it has just come out to say, I did it wrongly.
Mr. Falana, there is something that you said you have...
And again, let me say this. It's not in our court. You can talk of something very started.
So bad, yeah.
In the ECOWAS court in Abuja here, in the case of Femi Falana and Republic of Benin and others, the court said any violation after 3 years cannot be pursued here. But later, the improvement of the jurisprudence of the court has now come to the conclusion. I think that was in the case of Federation of Journalists, Gambia, and the government of that country, that once you are talking of serious, gross abuse of human rights, statute of limitation does not apply.
Let me take you on one very, very controversial matter that was also raised by the former head of state in his book, and it has to do with the late Delegiwa. And let me quote part of what he said. He said, and I quote, "My sense of loss was, however, overwhelmed by the public outcry and the feeling of tragedy in the introduction of an entirely novel mode of killing in our country, coming a few weeks after the OIC crisis, which led to the retirement of my number 2 Commodore, Ebitu Kue. I saw Giwa's wicked and cruel murder as part of a series of booby traps and acts of destabilization being hatched against the administration." End of quote. That's the account of General Babangida. And he said, hopefully, that one day, he said, Giwa was loved by his audience and the rest of the public. Targeting him would shock the public and paint the administration in a feeble light. He's saying that one day, the death and the truth about Delegiwa's death will be uncovered.
When he frustrated the attempt by the state to uncover the cause of that incident.
General Babangida in the book, Mr. Falana says that a lot of people know his closeness with Delegiwa, and they wanted to use that to paint him black, his administration black.
His relationship with General Vatsa, right, was much, much closer than that of Delegiwa. Vatsa was his best man. They grew up together. They were sleeping in the same room as bachelors, right? He had him killed without any basis. But coming to Delegiwa first. On October 19, 1986, when that unfortunate incident happened, one of the early callers in Delegiwa's house at Okpebi in Lagos was the late Mr. Tony Momma, the information minister of the junta. And he said publicly, just like I said, because of the novel manner of this death, we have never seen it before.
The popular letter bomb.
Yes. We're going to have a public inquiry. 2 days later, the junta reneged on the decision that a public inquiry would be conducted. As if that was not enough, the late Chief Gani Fahimi, a personal friend and lawyer to Delegiwa, took up the matter, wrote to the government, if you are not willing to prosecute, I am going to prosecute. Right? The government ignored him. Gani went to court. The High Court said you have no locus standi. What is personal to you? What interest do you have that is greater than members of the public in this unfortunate incident? You went to the Court of Appeal, the same ruling. But the Court of Appeal, the Supreme Court, royal like a lion. And in a very unique jurisprudential exposition, the Supreme Court held. I think the leading judgment was delivered by Justice Obaseki, who said, in Nigeria, you cannot challenge a concerned citizen for questioning the death of another person. The late Justice Esho put it in a more admirable manner when he said, the English concept of brother, neighborliness, requires blood brother, has nothing to do with us in Africa, where you have the extended family system, and that in matters of this nature, we are all our brothers' keepers. And therefore, Gani, as local standard. You know what happened? Gani then went to start the battle.
From the trial court all over again.
Unknown to him, the junta had secretly amended the law, Criminal Procedure Code of Lagos State, to limit private prosecution of criminal cases to perjury. So by the time Gani now started, the lawyer of the suspect of the government raised an objection that, my lord, you no longer have jurisdiction. The right to prosecute anybody for murder has been shifted. This matter was raised at Oputa. Gani gave his evidence.
I was going to make reference to Justice Oputa. And Mr. Falana, I'd like us to wrap up in this manner. I imagine that perhaps the reason, the intention of General Babangida was to lay a lot of questions, answer them, and lay things to rest, and offer a public apology. Unfortunately,
the book has raised more questions.
And you think it has opened
more Pandora box.
Now, the question here is that, is it possible that we move away from this history?
Take the one of Mama Vatsa, right? It was a case of premeditated murder. Whereas Vatsa and other officers were arrested in December 1985 on suspicion that they were planning a coup. At that time, the law did not allow the military. And so what happened? A month after the arrest, while they were in detention, General Babangida promulgated a decree on January 6, 1986, to try people who were arrested a month earlier. It's murder.
Mr. Falana, a lot of these things that happened in the military junta, and when we imagine that this the military regime is with force and sometimes without no depth of thought, of civility and democratic thought.
As the Supreme Court said in the case of Garba and Federal Civil Service Commission, the military, in coming to power, again this is the language of Justice Session, is always faced with whether to allow the rule of law to operate or rule of force. But once the rule of law is taken, I mean, it's chosen, you must do everything in accordance with the law. So they had their choice. They pretended they were civilized. And so they rule by decrees. And so once you depart from the enabling decree, the court will strike down.
On a final note, I thought Justice Oputa's panel would have also helped to heal. And you were a very active participant in that session, which was supposed to be our own kind of a panel of a healing, reconciliation, and Nigeria moving forward from the horrific past of the military days. But on a final note, Mr.
General Babangida went to court to stop the panel from inviting him to give his own account. Oh yes.
So where do we go from here? You say you are taking this matter to court.
Oh, I'm suing the general for engaging in the massive infringement of my fundamental human rights. I'm also challenging the malicious prosecution of my person and my colleagues.
Senator Ojo Okalu is saying that President Tinubu should recognize for late MK Abiola as a former president of Nigeria. Do you think that was necessary?
It's already, since 1993, he has been recognized by the people of Nigeria as an elected president. They are just these guys, who try to set the hands of the club back, are just recognizing that now. And the last one is about this, they want to set up a library. No former military head of state has ever set up a library. What do you want to read there? You can only have a library set up by an elected president. You understand me? So I hope they will, title it well. It should be military, a former military president, whatever, library. It shouldn't just be a presidential library because you confuse people.
General Babangida made it clear that it was military president, and there are those who debated that there is nothing like that.
No, there's nothing like that. No. You can't have a military president because a president is elected by the people. And so he said why he chose the title in the book, why he chose the title president was that he did it in line with the suspended provision of the Constitution. That suspended provision of the Constitution did not recognize a military dictator. Every officer under that Constitution must be elected.
Mr. Falana, thank you so very much. Do let us know as you move on with your litigation.
For sure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Gbàgede ìmọ̀ òun ni kẹ́ ẹ máa gbọ́. Orúkọ mi kí n tó máa lọ ní orí ètò yìí, orúkọ mi ni Àyẹ́tóyọ̀sí Ṣaworo nílùú. Gbàgede ìmọ̀ òun ni kẹ́ ẹ máa wò, kẹ́ ẹ máa gbọ́. Ó ń kọ́ yẹn lọ́gbọ́n, ó ń fún yẹn lóye.